Hello, 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 and welcome to another stream. I'm back in the Top Secret live stream studio today, having been out and about yesterday. If you guys caught up with my interview stroke conversation with Mr. James Tusk yesterday, did that at a different location, sat down next to each other on the couch. It was a little bit like one of those cheesy morning shows that you get on TV where people are talking about cookery and clothes and housekeeping and what to do during lockdown, except we were discussing degeneracy and dating. It was a great stream. Really enjoyed doing it. Awesome to meet James finally. He's a cool guy. So if you haven't checked that particular stream out yet, then I would advise you to do so because it was really good. Obviously, it's the video that was up on my channel yesterday. So so watch that if you haven't already at some point. Let me know what you think. Give me a comment, give me a like, all of that stuff. I think there was a lot of actionable stuff in there, as well as just getting an understanding of James Tusk himself and how he got into day game and his sort of philosophy of dating and day game, etc. So it was a really good session. I really enjoyed it. But anyway, back in the mothership today. And we've got another solo show for you today. And what I'm going to discuss now is basically something very important, which is why women leave good men, and 5 key reasons why women leave good men. I've actually, on my notes here, I've written why women leave good women, which I'm perhaps not as qualified to talk about, although maybe they leave good women as well. I don't know. But anyway, we're going to be focusing on why women leave good men today, the 5 key reasons that you need to know about. I mean, obviously, relationships end for all manner of reasons that could be articulated in many different ways. But, you know, when it comes down to it, really a lot of relationships end for a fairly finite number of reasons, really, that you can define fairly easily. And so we're going to be talking about those today. And maybe, you know, if you're in a relationship and you can kind of see this starting to happen in your relationship, or if you're worried that it's going to happen in your relationship, or indeed if you have come out of a relationship because one or more of these things has happened, then just give me a nod in the chat, share your experiences with us. It's more than welcome, and I'll get them up on the screen and we'll talk about it. In particular as well, if you've got questions, any questions at all about dating, about game, the dating marketplace. Stephen says it happened in mine, man. Sorry to hear that, mate. Hang in there and let's see if you can identify with any of what we're going to talk about now. Any questions about dating, about game, etc., stick them in the chat and we will get to them ASAP, or as after I've done the initial talk about this issue of why women leave good men. I see that Newman's put a question in the chat already. Thank you for that, sir. I will be getting to that very soon. But now let's just crack into this topic. I suppose actually before that, I should say, please do subscribe to this channel. Really helps me to grow the audience, etc. Hit the notifications bell. If you want to get on my free daily email list as well, you can do so below. You can also support me by grabbing Renegade Dating Blueprint, which is my collection of books on dating and game. And you can get on my Patreon as well. This channel is not monetized, so you're not watching annoying adverts, which I think is a good thing. I think improves the quality of what we're doing here. But if you want to support me and help me out in other ways, then those are some of the ways that you can. Okay, so why do women leave good men? Now, this is something that happens a lot. If you recall that 70%, I think it is, of divorces are initiated by the female, not the male. I mean, that's a lot, right? That's the majority of divorces are not initiated by the guy, they're initiated by the woman. Generally speaking, as much as people will pretend otherwise, a lot of the time, anecdotally, we know that boyfriend-girlfriend relationships can be are ended by the girl as opposed to by the guy. You know what it's like when a mate of yours has broken up with a girl and you're saying like, oh, so what happened? how did it come to this? And he's like, oh yeah, mate, it was mutual, you know? And whenever they say it was mutual, then you kind of know deep down that it wasn't actually mutual, and his ass got dumped. He got kicked to the curb by the girl. I mean, you know, it might be that he's not actually that unhappy about it because he was aware that the thing had run its course and he was maybe looking for a way out as well. So that can happen. But he is nevertheless, you know, it's her that takes that action. It's her that ends the relationship. It's not to say that all relationships are always ended by the woman. Of course, that's not true. But I think the divorce figures bear this out. And I think that just our personal experience in terms of like dating and seeing what happens to friends and all of this kind of stuff is that in most cases, it's the women that end the relationship. And I think that's in part because guys have scarcity mentality. So the guy is worried that, okay, well, if I leave this girl, you know, like maybe I don't particularly want to be with her anymore, but if I go back out there into the cruel, cold dating marketplace, you know, what are my prospects going to be out there? You know, it's like the old bird in a hand is worth two in a bush kind of idea, if you like. And also just, you know, I think guys can be very complacent as well. I mean, like guys, as much as we, you know, talk about being rugged and alpha and all of that kind of stuff, the truth of the matter is that guys, generally speaking, you know, we like comfort. Guys like comfort. We like to just say, okay, right, so I've got my girlfriend. That part of my life is sorted. I know I go home to her, maybe she cooks, or maybe sometimes I cook and we have a nice dinner together. We watch Netflix, whatever it is. It's all really nice, and I've got that boxed off and compartmentalized, and now I can focus on these different areas of my life as well. And I think that guys will go with the flow for a lot longer than women will, even if the guy is unhappy with aspects of the relationship. He'll probably kind of just go along with it because, you know, I mean, like it's kind of easier. And I think guys often take the path of least resistance. I know I certainly have in the past. So, you know, guys are less likely to end a relationship. But also as well, you know, guys, particularly young men, and if they're dating young women, you know, who has the more options out of the two groups? You know, the girl, as we all know, and it doesn't need to be repeated ad infinitum, but the girl, as we know, can break up from the guy. She can go on Tinder. She can get like, you know, a million matches almost instantaneously if she's got some nice pictures. She can be on a date that night. She can be sleeping with a new guy that very same night, probably in the very same hour if she wanted to. And she could be in a new relationship within that day or within a couple of days. So women don't have that sort of the actual genuine scarcity that guys often have or feel that they have. A guy, in the meantime, can be devastated by the breakup, and it can take him a really long time to meet somebody else. And this, by the way, is why you need to study this stuff. This is why it's good that you're here and you're listening to this talk. And it's why coaching, as we were saying yesterday, as James Tusk was saying yesterday on the stream, it's why coaching in one form or another is such a valuable asset for you to have. And coaching comes in the form of in-person coaching between you and me, but also in something like Charisma and Dating Academy, which is my course, which this whole stream is named after. That's a form of, you know, distance coaching, if you like. But coaching is really, really important, because what you don't want to do is put yourself into that situation whereby, I'll just put up the brand there, by the way. You don't want to put yourself into that situation whereby, you know, you are left high and dry by a girl, you're dumped by a girl that you really like, and you've got, you know, suddenly you've got no options, and it's cold and it's coming up to Christmas, and it's, you know, and you're like, well, it could be 6 months before I get my love life back on track again. You know, you want to get some sort of like awareness and understanding of this stuff so that you can smooth out that process, if you like. But anyway, that being said, what are the key reasons why women leave men, and leave good men, indeed? Well, the first one, and this is really the most important one, and the one that we need to concentrate on the most, is that you turned beta. Okay. Now, I don't particularly like these terms, alpha and beta. I think they're kind of misunderstood, and I think they conform to stereotypes that aren't always particularly helpful. But nevertheless, there's a notion of this thing called the Beaterization Curve. It was introduced in a book called Practical Female Psychology. One of the authors was a guy called Franco. I forget the other two authors, but it's a really, really great book. It's on Amazon. You should seek it out and you should get it. But in Practical Female Psychology, Franco et al. Describe this process that they call Beaterization, which is basically when the guy is, by the machinations of the woman that he's with, forced to sort of become beaterized. That is to say, his rough edges are shaved off and he is suddenly more docile. He's more obedient. You know, he doesn't have that adventurous quality to him anymore. Maybe he even gets a little bit fat. He puts on a little bit of the old, the old COVID weight, and he loses that edge. He loses whatever it was that he had initially that actually made the woman attracted to him in the first place. And it's a big topic, and maybe we can do another whole show about, beaterization. But it's fascinating, really, when you think that women are complicit in this. I mean, women drive this in relationships, but I don't think it's something that they consciously do. I don't think there's any woman. Well, I mean, maybe there are a few, but I think it's fairly rare that there are women out there thinking, I want to make my man less attractive. Most women, on the one hand, they want to be going out with a guy who is attractive, who's sexy, who's sex-worthy to her, but also is sex-worthy to other women as well. Ideally, somebody who is looked up to by men, all of that stuff. Men want to be him. Women want to be with him. That kind of stereotype. She wants to be with that kind of guy on the one hand, on one level. But on another level, there is that subconscious fear that if the guy is too hypergamously interesting to other women, that is to say, if the guy is too high value, then there is a chance that he could go off to pastures new, that she could lose that guy. And so subconsciously, women will seek to bring men down a peg or two. They might say something like, oh, that haircut you've got doesn't really suit you. Why don't you get like a more, she's not going to say this, but what she means is, why don't you get a more boring haircut? Or why don't wear those edgy clothes? Why don't you wear this nice sweater from Marks and Spencer's? If you don't have that in the US, it's a shop in the UK, but you know what I'm saying? Like a sort of a boring kind of middle of the road kind of dress sense. She might start to feed you up a bit with foods, with high carb meals, and so on and so forth. So you start to put on a bit of the old COVID weight, and all of these things. And she, as I say, I don't believe that in most cases she's doing this consciously, but with all of these things, she is reducing your sexual market value. She's reducing your attractiveness to other women, and it's making it more likely that she can hang on to you. But of course, the paradox of this, and the cruel irony really of this, is that she, in doing that, becomes less attracted to you as time goes on. And this is why you get these marriages where the man has become a sort of fat Peter Griffin style caricature, really, a shadow of his former self, albeit a bigger shadow. And the woman's just not really into him anymore. I mean, she might love him, she might even somewhat enjoy the time that she has with him. She might really appreciate him. Even imagine if they've got children and, he's doing a lot of, he's looking after the children, or he's working really hard in order to bring money in for the family, whatever it is. She might appreciate him, but does she feel that visceral lust for him that she felt at the beginning? No, because he's not the same guy. He's a guy that has fallen into her frame. So that's where I'm going down the slightly conspiratorial idea that the woman is doing this on purpose. But it's also just a natural consequence of the fact that, women seek stability for obvious reasons. She wants to, most women at some point want to start a family, to raise children, etc., etc. She also wants to do that with the guy with the highest possible genetic value that she can find. But she doesn't want this dude to be running around all over the place and creating havoc. She might find that sexy bad boy attractive in her youth, and we're going to come on to that in a minute. But like in the end, it's in her interest to sort of tame the guy. So she will tame the guy that she's with. But as I say, unfortunately, and this is a terribly cruel irony, it's a terribly cruel quirk of human nature when you come to think of it, that unfortunately that's just going to make her also simultaneously less attracted to him. And the attraction, that lust between the two of you, as much as people don't like to admit it, that is really the glue that holds everything together. And when you start to lose that, not to say that couples can't stay together for 60 years and all of that stuff, and it kind of morphs into more of a friendship and whatever. I mean, of course, that can and does happen, but it's a tricky road. You've got to hope that you're with a woman who really, really is loyal and really, really is committed to you, because when the feels start to go, and when she is looking on Instagram and she's seeing these, hot dudes who are jacked and keeping themselves in great shape and, going out and making money and muscle and, whatever, is she going to be tempted? Well, very probably she is. So yeah, I mean, the main reason I think that women leave is because the guy who's probably a perfectly good guy, he's a nice dude. He's a decent, solid geezer, as we say in London, who is doing the right thing as far as he's been told by society. She finds him less attractive, even though he's done the right thing. And as I say, this is a horribly cruel quirk of fate, of the way that we are wired as human beings. But you need to be aware of it. Domesticity, in particular, is the great Eros killer. I use that line in my free email tonight. I've got an email going out later tonight, by the way, on this very topic. You can sign up for free. The link is in the description below. I send out emails most days of the week. So I've got a mini essay about this whole thing where I expand on this a little bit in writing. But yeah, I mean, domesticity, when you two move in together, that really is the Eros killer. Unless you're very careful, or unless you're very lucky, or unless you need to find ways to spice things up. And this is why you get these horrendous sort of, middle-aged couples going to swingers parties and things like that. And because they're trying to get that spice back. And it's tough, man. It's tough. So yeah, when you start living together, because once you start living together, then you are completely in the frame, aren't you? You are, whereas before, when you guys were dating and you were maybe sleeping in different, you're living in different places, there was always that sort of competition anxiety because she doesn't know what you're doing every night. You could be out and about philandering. Not to say that you are, and not even to say that you should do that, but you might be. There's that possibility. When you guys are living together, she feels safer because she knows where you are, and she knows that it's a lot more difficult for you to get out there and do the philandering. But she also, in feeling safer, feels less sexually turned on, less aroused by you. And that is a problem. Okay. And if it's unchecked, that is a problem that can lead her to leaving you, a good man, in the lurch. Okay. So beaterization, becoming beta, another way of saying it is just having your rough edges smoothed, the corners taken off. It's really, really bad as far as relationships are concerned. And it's really, really bad for the longevity of relationships. But it's also, in a crazy way, a sort of inevitable part of a longer term relationship. And I don't know that anybody is really, as far as I know, I mean, maybe some people have, but it's hard to think of examples, even of celebrity famous couples who have managed to counter this. I mean, famously for years, Helena Bonham Carter and Tim Burton, the director, they were together, but they lived in separate houses. And people would say, well, look at that. They found the magic they found the magic formula because they're living, they're together, but they're living apart, so they get that space, blah blah blah. Well, even they ended up splitting up. So it's really tough. It's really tough to know how to work this. And this is why Black Dragon, the blogger and the YouTuber, is a really interesting guy, because he's written for years about this issue that is a sort of integral part of relationships, really, that the longer that they go on, the more tricky it can be to maintain that mystery and that spark and therefore that desire that's holding the whole damn thing together. The other thing to bear in mind, and this is something that Mr. Rollo Tomasi says all the time, or has written about extensively, is that you never escape the judgment of the sexual marketplace. So the whole thing, I think, for a guy is to think, well, look, I'm just going to I'll get married or I'll move in with this girl and that's going to be cool because then I can relax and we're going to have sex 4 times a week and she's going to cook my dinner and it's all going to be brilliant forever. And I can just, as I say, concentrate on other things. I can start making model planes, or, I don't know, join the territorial army, or take up golf or whatever, because the relationship thing is handled. But what you have to remember is that you are always subject to the judgment of the dating marketplace. So as long as there is breath in her body and there's Instagram on her smartphone, she will be able to see other guys who may measure up better than you, and that is going to be to your detriment unless you're keeping yourself very sharp and very, in the game. Okay. And a lot of guys fail to do that. Okay. Number 2, FOMO, fear of missing out. She feels like she's missed out in the past. Now, a lot of the time, guys will talk about this thing that if women have had a very checkered relationship history, they've dated many guys, then those women will find it difficult to pair bond with their husbands, with men for long-term relationships. And there's undoubtedly, I'm sure there's some truth in that. But what's important to remember is that the opposite is also true. If the woman has had a fairly sparse history with sexual partners, that is to say, she hasn't had many boyfriends, then there's a real danger that 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, 15 years down the line, she's going to be seeing pictures of all of her friends on Instagram or social media, going out there, partying, enjoying themselves, meeting different guys. And remember, as your partner's friends start to come out of their own relationships, get divorced, etc., go back out into the game, you maybe start to see younger guys for a bit. She's going to be looking at this, and there's always that danger that in the back of her head, she's thinking, do you know what? I never really experienced life to the full when I was younger. I never really kind of experienced the fruits of promiscuity to the degree that I could have done. Did I settle down too early? Did I cash in my chips a bit too early? What if things have been different? What if I'd have waited until my mid-30s before we settled down, rather than 27, which is when we got together? This is what the notional wife or girlfriend is thinking. And FOMO has only been increased and made more poignant by the modern world, by social media, by images that we see on television, by the general culture, which is a culture that basically encourages degeneracy, and all the better for it. But it's a problem if you're trying to construct something long term, right? So this whole idea, and this is something that the trads talk about a lot, is that all you have to do is just find a really innocent young woman and get married to her early, and then she's and then you're good for life. Sadly, and I hate to burst people's bubble here, but sadly, that's not always the case, because as I say, the opposite thing can happen. She can wake up one day and feel that she hasn't had the experiences that she wanted to have. And again, if you are very alpha, in inverted commas, if you're well put together, if you are if you're holding frame in the relationship, as they say, can you curtail this? Can you make her less likely to stray? Yeah, probably, maybe for a bit, but it's tricky. I mean, think about all of the famous guys, famous very, very alpha guys, rich, powerful men who have been cheated on, who have been left in the past by women, and you will see that, all of the holding frame and the being alpha and all that kind of stuff that you read about on the internet is not necessarily going to save your ass. So just be aware that her feeling that perhaps she's missed out on something in the past could come back to bite you. Number 3, and this one perhaps will surprise you a little bit because it's actually the counter opposite of number 1. And this is that the woman in your life regards you as too much of a player. Now, again, that may seem to run counter to received knowledge in this space, where guys will say things like, well, man, if you're just like that alpha Chad and you're the player and you're, he who cares least has the most power in the relationship, and, treat them mean, keep them keen, and girls like bad boys, and, all of that stuff, all of which is true, by the way. Then you could be forgiven for thinking, okay, so she's, like, if I'm just the roguish player kind of dude, then I'm all good because she's never going to leave because, she's always going to be attracted to that sort of an archetype. But that's not necessarily true either. And the reason it's not true is, again, for almost the counter opposite to point 1, because when she's with a player, or when she's with the playboy type guy, then that may be really exciting. It may be really thrilling. She may really, love it. She may be very aroused by that guy. The sex may be amazing, blah, blah, blah. But also, and this partly depends on how old she is and what phase in her life she's at some point, she's going to want something more than that. At some point, most women, as I said, want to settle, they want to have a family, and they want to find the right partner who is going to help them to facilitate that. And if you are the roguish, Peter Pan, never grown up playboy type guy, she knows on some level that you are not the right dude to facilitate that. Now, you might say, well, if this guy is such a playboy and, he's not the settling down type, then is he going to care anyway? Is he even going to be bothered that his woman eventually is going to, decide not to stick with him and go for somebody else? And typically what happens, by the way, is that the woman will either just break off with the alpha player because, she's aware that time is ticking, and now she wants to meet somebody who's more stable, maybe a bit more of a provider type of a character, somebody who's got a really good pension plan and maybe some equity in a semi-detached house in a commuter town or something like that. Or she's going to have an affair, or she's going to at least initiate contact with a guy that meets that description and then break off with the alpha player. And she might be heartbroken. She might not be happy about breaking off with that player guy, but she's still going to do it because in the end, she wants to fulfill her genetic imperative. In most cases, not all women, not in all circumstances, but you know what I'm saying. In general, women like to have their fun with the bad boys when they're younger, and then they're looking for that guy who's a bit more stable, who's a bit more of a provider, who's not going to be going out for tequilas with the guys and then being away for 3 nights, or gets drunk and he ends up in Miami and at the casino or whatever it is. That kind of guy may be exciting when she's 23. That kind of dude may be exciting, in her youth. But as she gets to her later 20s and indeed into her 30s, then with some regret, that's not what she can afford to have in her life anymore. And she realizes that. So, I've had experiences in the past where I have had sort of friends with benefits type encounters with women, and then at some point they'll sit me down and they'll say, listen, Troy, it's been great. I really like you, but I need to move on now because I want these things and it would appear that you don't. And so therefore, this is just not the right situation for me to be in. And then, you open up Facebook and you have a look at what they're doing, and, they're with some guy who kind of looks like a bit of a chump. I mean, this is the thing. I mean, you look at, I remember one girl in particular that I'd had a very, very casual thing on. I mean, she doesn't even live in the United Kingdom. So it wasn't a relationship, but, we'd seen each other. And then I'm looking at her Instagram and she started seeing this guy, and I'm like, Jesus, that guy is, I mean, man, I've like, talk about low value. But I assume, somebody with a good, solid career, somebody who's got his stuff together in terms of, being a bit more of that provider type character, maybe a very nice man, right? And, and I looked at her, what I would regard her SMV as, which was, pretty high, and his, and it was sort of down here. And yet it appeared that now I tell this story, it ended up, she split up with that particular guy anyway, but this is just an example. It appeared that she had chosen to cash in her chips with this dude. I was really shocked. I was showing friends going, can you believe this? Look at this guy. And they were like, yeah, well, laughing and stuff. But in the end, that's what happens. And this was an attractive girl. She was from New York City. She lived in Manhattan, and then she lived in Brooklyn. Cool girl. But at that certain point, she recognized that she needed to, sort of calm down and get with the program. This guy, whose name I can never pronounce, but Didux, says, thanks for the James Tusk podcast. Excellent. Thanks, mate. Yeah, it was really good. He's a great guy. It was a really fun conversation. I would encourage you, if you haven't checked it out, to check it out. It's yesterday's video on this channel. Good conversation with James. It went on for about an hour and a half. So yeah, and hopefully more to come of that collaboration at some point. So being too much of a player can also get you dumped. Now, again, as I say, if you're that much of a player, maybe it doesn't matter. Some guys are very philosophical about this. They're like, well, whatever, a plate's fallen off. I'll just get back on Tinder and get another one. Fine. But the title of this is Why Women Leave Good Men. If you regard players as good men, why women leave men. And that is a reason. Okay, that happens. But the other thing to say is that not all players, in inverted commas, are completely stony, cold, kind of like, they don't care about anything. I mean, players will have girls that they particularly like. They will have even friends with benefits that they have grown attached to, that they've got some of that oxytocin with, that love drug kind of chemical vibe with. And so when the girl chooses to leave for another dude who may well be of a, objectively lower caliber than the player, that can sting, that can hurt. So you've got to be aware of this dynamic as well. Although I would say, and this is completely unscientific, but this is my gut feeling, is that number one is going to be more common. This idea of beaterization is going to be more common than the dude being too much of a player. But just recognize that it does happen that way around as well. Number 4. Oh, by the way, actually, sorry, just before we go on to that, there was something that occurred to me while I was doing my workout before. If the guy is too much of a player, or even if he's just very high value, and not even necessarily a player, but he's got the potential to be a player, the girl may choose to leave him because of her ego. Okay, and I've seen this myself before. I've experienced this myself before, where I think girls can be very low self-esteem. Not all women, but women can be very low self-esteem underneath the facade, underneath the surface. And so if she feels like there's a possibility that she is going to get played, or this guy may cheat, or he's doing something a bit dodgy, there's a good chance, just to protect her ego, that she's just going to cut it off. And as I say, I've seen this. I've experienced this myself. I've seen it in the lives of friends and others. So just beware of of her ego protection, because her ego protection may kick in and she just goes, do you know what? This guy was out all of Friday night. He didn't have his phone switched on, or he left me on read. He's got what seems like a pretty plausible reason for that. He said he was at a prayer meeting at his friend's house and they weren't going to allowed to use their phones. But I kind of don't believe him, and so I'm just going to cut it off now, because even if his excuse sounds plausible, his reasoning sounds plausible for why he didn't respond to my messages, and even though I actually really like him and I'm really sexually attracted to him and I love sleeping with him and so on and so forth, I'm going to cut this damn thing off because it's just too much of a risk to my ego. It's just too potentially damaging, and she would rather have the last laugh. She would rather be the one to pull the plug, because then she just goes, all right, sorry, I got rid of him. And she can tell herself that, and she can have that sort of sense of pride. So beware of that dynamic as well if you fall into that more player type archetype. Okay, number 4, and this is probably the most mainstream of my points today. This is the kind of thing that you would get really in a GQ magazine or in a woman's magazine or anything else chatting about relationships, is you've got different visions for the future. And ultimately that's very, very true. As I said, I mean, like, in the end, women in general, and again, this is not all women, I'm not making massive generalizations here, but many, many women, young women, would like at some point to have children and to raise a family, and to, in doing that, live in a fairly stable environment, a relatively traditional setup, not like traditional, but like a relatively stable kind of setup, to have nice things, to have a nice place to live, to have a stable income, all of that stuff, right? Fair enough. So if your vision for your life, if your vision for the future is different to that, or if she suspects that your vision for the future is different to that, even if maybe it isn't, or maybe in a few years' time you're going to change your mind, then there's a good chance that she's going to give you the boot, because it's just too damn important. You can't mess around with that stuff. And as guys, we need to consider this as well, by the way. The girl has a finite window when she is at peak fertility and able to reproduce safely, okay? And she can't mess around with that. As much as she might like to, and as much as she might try to extend that window a little bit, in the end, if she wants a certain thing, if she wants the wife and if she wants the kids and the picket fence, she's going to have to make a move in that direction. It's not negotiable, and this is people's lives. So if you are that philanderer, if you've got that different sort of vision for your life, if you're talking about buying a van and putting all your possessions in the van and driving around America, great. She might really admire that. She might think that's cool that you're that free spirit and, you're not bowing to the man and you're into minimalism and stuff. But in the end, she's got to make that decision for her. And I believe that the reason that women can often be quite ruthless in terms of their decision-making process is because the imperative is so strong for them to get this part of their lives handled and to get it right. Okay. And if she feels like maybe she got it wrong, then it's likely that she's going to cut that cord very soon. So having different vision for the future is really important. And where things get a little bit messy, because I mean, yes, okay, if you're just a player and you're traveling around and seeing lots of different people and stuff, maybe this doesn't become an issue. But where it becomes a little bit messy is, as I say, when you start to become attached, when the oxytocin starts to fire up, when you start to spend more time with her. And when you start to spend more time with her, cuddling on the sofa on a Saturday afternoon leads into her staying over the next night and, watching Netflix and eating ice cream together, all of that stuff. When you're in that territory, then you've got an issue, because it's like, okay, so where do we move forward from this? And if you're not moving forward and she wants to move forward, in the end, she's going to cut it, or you're going to have to cut it first. Okay. So bear that in mind, because as boring as it sounds and as normy as it sounds, like, oh, what is your life vision with your compared with your partner? You know, it does make a difference. And number 5, and I'm going to not spend very much time discussing this one because I'm going to do another whole show about this. But number 5, and this is connected with, in particular, number 1, it might be connected with number 2. Actually, it could be connected with any of the aforementioned, is that she is cheating. That is to say, she's seeing somebody else, or she's sleeping with somebody else, or at least she's initiated contact with somebody else. You know, she's teed things up. She's getting it going in the background, and she leaves you for another dude. Okay. Now, as I said, really, that the reason that she might do that applies or could be connected with all of the first 4 points. So it might be that you became a beta simp. It might be that she feels she missed out in the past, and so she'd like to, you know, get some more experience. It might be that she thinks you're too much of a player. She feels it's dangerous, that her ego is going to be damaged, and so she's preempting that. It could be that you guys got a different vision for the future, and she's just like, well, whatever, I'm just going to, you know, cast the net out wider. But whatever. It could be that she is cheating on you, and that is something, obviously, you have to countenance, and you have to then think about your strategy. And really, there is no strategy when you reach that point. The strategy is you get out, and you delete, and you block, and you cut off all contact, and you start again. Because once that has happened, once that Rubicon has been passed, then there really is no coming back from it. But we will go into that in more detail in another show. We'll do a show specifically about infidelity, about cheating, maybe the signs you can look out for, maybe, you know, what you do about it. I've kind of told you what you do about it already, but you know what I mean, et cetera, and the reasons for it as well. As I say, they kind of relate to all of that, really. I mean, the most common reason of all that she's going to cheat is because you became a boring normie simp. I mean, that's what happens a lot of the time, particularly in boyfriend-girlfriend relationships, I think, with younger women. You know, when younger girls, and I'm not saying older women do this as well, but when younger girls who are really just out there looking for fun, you know, they're not looking for Mr. What's the expression? They're not looking for Mr. Long Time. They're looking for Mr. Good Time, or whatever, or, you know, whatever. If she's looking for a fun time, girls just want to have fun, and you've suddenly become this overly invested, simpy, needy idiot, then there's a good chance that she will just end up cheating with some dude who's an alpha kind of captain of the football team jock sort of guy, because that's what she's in the market for at that particular time. If she's a bit older, if you're a bit older, you're in a more serious relationship, you're looking at family and all that kind of stuff. If you are that beta kind of chump, then, well, maybe she chose you because you're that kind of guy. You know, maybe she left the alpha dude. Maybe she left the Chad to come to you because she thinks with you there's a greater potential for provisioning. So maybe you're safe for a bit, but bear in mind that a lot of marriages end up failing after the kids are born, after the first sort of 3 years or so. Then you can be on dicey ground. So you don't get a free pass, but it kind of depends on how old she is and where she is in her life, the degree to which simpiness is going to get you cheated on. But I mean, ultimately, in all circumstances, you need to avoid it to the greatest degree possible. Even if you are the patriarch, you've got to be a badass patriarch. You know what I'm saying? You've got to, you don't allow yourself to soften. You don't allow yourself to become a boring, kind of slightly rotund caricature of your former self. You've got to stay sharp. You've got to stay on it, because, as we said earlier, you will always be judged in the sexual marketplace, regardless of whether you're in a relationship or not. You can't get away from it. The only way you get away from it is essentially by going your own way. That is to say, essentially saying, listen, I'm just going to walk away from the whole game. I'm not going to play it. Now, you're still going to be judged. Mr. Long Time versus Mr. Fun Time. You're still going to be judged. You know, you'll walk out your apartment into the street. Women will judge your attractiveness. They'll make that mental assessment of your sexual market value. but if you're saying I've walked away from the game, I'm not going to date women anymore, or I'm going to, you know, whatever tier of MGTOW you're on, then I guess, you know, it doesn't matter so much. But I mean, this isn't a MGTOW channel, and we can only speculate the degree to which those guys are actually happy with the lifestyle that they have ostensibly selected. So yeah, I mean, if you are still in the game, you know, you're always going to be judged regardless. How much you care about being judged is another thing, and you can, of course, moderate that, but you're always going to be judged. So yeah, that's it really in terms of that rundown. So I'll just go through them again. Why women leave good men, 5 key reasons. 1, you turned beta, you fell prey to beterization. Number 2, she feels like she missed out in the past, fear of missing out, FOMO. Number 3, you're too much of a player. You know, it's the opposite of number 1. You're actually too much of a player. You're too much of the alpha bad boy. Number 4, you have a different vision for the future. And number 5, she's cheating, and she could be cheating on you for any of the first 4 reasons or something else, you know. But we'll go more into that in a future episode of CAD Live. So that being said, I hope that you enjoyed that. I hope that you got something. I hope you got something from that. That sounds like Joker from Better Bachelor fixing up his bus and planning his American tour journey adventure. Well, man, I mean, you know, like he seems a good guy. I mean, like whatever you want to do. And you know, the thing about MGTOW is that although it's given short shrift around these parts, nevertheless, I think. Sorry, I was just checking a message. I think that tier 1 MGTOW is pretty acceptable. You know, they're talking about they still date, they have relationships, they go out with girls, they have women in their lives, they don't cohabitate, they don't have families, but you know they're still communing with women. I think I don't see any massive issue with that. I think it's when you get to the higher tiers and you're talking about the plastic dolls and all of that kind of thing, it gets a little bit odd. But yeah, I mean, you know, Joker, if like it's great. I mean, if you want to travel around the outback in a van, I mean, Tom Torero obviously has his own van. He's doing a little bit of van life himself around Europe at the moment. Awesome, fantastic. But you have to recognize that lifestyle is not necessarily going to float the boat of women who are looking for suburbia, women who are looking for stability and, that kind of very traditional sort of life. Now, that's not to say, I mean, people do van life and they have kids. Sounds like a nightmare, but people do it. So that, you know, there are exceptions to the rule, but in general, you know what I'm saying. Danny says that's every woman I've ever been involved with. Cheaters, a lot of them. That's a little bit. That's a little bit negative. I mean, do you genuinely believe that? I'd be interested if guys, if you're watching this and you agree with Danny that they're all cheaters, put a 1 in the chat. And if you think that they've all got the propensity to cheat, but they're not all necessarily all cheaters, put a 2 in the chat. So put a 1 in the chat if you think all women are cheaters, a lot of them. And let's see what they... Let's see if anyone responds to that. But stick a 1 in the chat if you think all women are cheaters. I mean, for myself, I think I try to be a bit more nuanced about it. I think that everybody... Oh, okay, we've got a mixture. We've got a mixture so far. I think everyone's got the propensity to cheat. I think all women have got the propensity to cheat. I don't necessarily believe... In fact, I don't believe that every single woman will definitely cheat under all circumstances. That's just not my experience of life. But I certainly think that they can. It kind of depends on a number of different things. It partly depends on what kind of guy you are. You know, what kind of guy you are for her in that moment. So yeah, but I don't think it's like a hard and fast rule, but I think it certainly happens a lot. It's certainly something to look out for sure. which is why why it's good to be kind of taking in this content, and why it's good to get coaching. It's good to get on a program like Cat Academy or something, so you understand these dynamics. So the unpronounceable Mr. Diduck says, you never trust RSD, MGTOW, or anybody. I don't think you brought up RP once during the TUS podcast class act. Well, I mean, I don't think I did. I mean, like RSD, I like a lot of their stuff. I certainly liked a lot of the old stuff. I was watching even a Tyler video recently. I quite like even some of the new stuff. MGTOW, I haven't really got... Thing is, right, I haven't got a problem really with anybody in terms of how they want to live their life. I haven't really got a massive problem with MGTOWs. I mean, if you want to just never speak to women and you want to, have sex with a latex doll, that's fine. I mean, I haven't got an issue with that. Or any other sort of tier of MGTOW, I mean, I haven't particularly got an issue with the with some of the black pill guys, except to say that I think that the philosophy that they're spreading is toxic, and I think it can be damaging for other people. But I mean, like, everybody's got a right to choose their worldview and their philosophy and how they want to live their life, for sure. In terms of bringing up red pill, I mean, like as much as the terminology is useful, you don't always have to get into the terminology. It doesn't always have to be like suddenly we're using all these terms, we're using this language, because the dynamics that we are discussing here have been going on for many, many centuries. Many years of human existence have these dynamics existed. I mean, I'm reading all of Shakespeare at the moment. Like, so right now I am reading Winter's Tale by Shakespeare, which is a really good one, actually. And that is a play that concerns itself with jealousy, with a king being very jealous, very suspicious of his wife. He thinks his wife's cheating, his jealousy, and the tragedy that leads to, and everything. And like all of this stuff, this kind of like red pill stuff, it's nothing new. It's been going on for centuries. It's been going on for thousands of years. You can see it in the old Greek and Roman classics. So the lingo is useful, but you don't always have to just sort of like, we don't have to be reading out of a textbook here. Do you know what I mean? To talk about this stuff. And also, it is, when you're like somebody like James, it's very much about action. It's not really about theorizing, I don't think. And I kind of prefer it like that, to be honest. Josh says, is this live stream going to be public? I think it is public. I hope it's public. Otherwise, I've made a mistake. What else? Brian says, I think I have success as a player since I very much don't come across as a player, if I do say so myself. I mean, that is that sort of stealth kind of approach, that kind of stealth seduction, to coin a phrase, is really powerful, I think. Talk about this guy. Are you familiar with Kevin Samuels? 99% female RP, but high value. I don't know his stuff. I saw somebody else saying he's a Christian simp. I don't know, but I'll check it. I'll check him out. I'll find out about him. Dear Esquire Francis, with regard to day game respecting appearance, would you advise that I, attorney, get rid of my glasses? Not necessarily. It depends how they look. I mean, glasses can look pretty cool. You need to get really a style makeover. You need to go to an optician's where they sell some cool designer frames, and speak to one of the female assistants there, or indeed one of the male. If you've got any gay male assistants in there, that can be really good as well. And get their opinion, get them to give you, an honest opinion about how you look, the kind of frames that would suit your face, and you could do that. I mean, I don't think it's a deal breaker, put it that way, but it depends on what the glasses look like. I mean, if they're terrible, like sort of, jam jar glasses, as we used to say, then that's not gonna work. So Newman says, I want to mass approach, but I'm scared I'll run out of girls and develop a reputation. Any advice? Yeah, move somewhere bigger. You know, where do you live? It depends where you live. But if you're going to run out of girls and get a reputation, then you need to ultimately, really, you've got to move somewhere bigger. You know, you need to move to a big city. You need to move to a Manhattan or to a London or to a Singapore or, you know, whatever. This works very well in big metropolitan environments. It works less well in smaller, rural, more traditional environments. That's just a fact. You know, if you want to live in a place that's smaller and more quiet and less anonymous and has less of a sizable population, that's up to you. But you might have to accept that, you know, you're just not going to get the results that you could elsewhere. Trafalgar Square is superb for day game. Well, it is, but like it's not my favorite place, I have to say, just because it's very touristy and like I always preferred to meet women who were not necessarily from London or even from Britain, but I quite like to meet women who live here. As opposed to women who are just passing through, because when they're tourists, you get all of that sort of, you get certain complications. You know, we've got to go to the Eiffel, we've got to go to the the London Eye tomorrow, and we're going for dinner here tonight, and blah blah blah. And you know, they only maybe have a very short itinerary. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely a cool place to check out. Noonan again says, what are the best cities in the States for game in your opinion? New York, Manhattan, Miami, Las Vegas. I mean, it's all the obvious ones to be honest. And look as well, you know, because I'm a bit of a rube and I haven't been to some of the smaller cities, I can't really speak to them, I'm afraid. But I mean, certainly Manhattan, I think, is one of the best places in the world. Vegas is a lot of fun. Miami's good fun as well. So yeah. Josh says, are you still practicing day game after your engagement? Well, I'm not engaged actually. So yeah, I teach clients. I mean, I have a girlfriend. I teach clients. I take clients out. I've done probably over 10,000 approaches in my life. So I've got a lot of experiences under my belt, but that is fake news. I'm not engaged. Rural game. Do you think my tractor's sexy? Yeah. I'll tell you who thinks tractors are sexy is Lushenko, who is he the president of the Belarus, and his response to COVID was to say, drink vodka, go outside, and drive tractors in the sun, and that will keep you safe from COVID. So yeah, I think tractors are pretty sexy in Belarus, I think, which is a good thing to know because Belarusian girls are very hot. Okay, so Afro Surfer says, I'm stuck with vetting a girl on Bumble. I made the mistake to talk about some mental issue, which I experienced within past relationships. She's now cold AF. Can I save this or move on? That's unfortunate, isn't it? What kind of mental issues are you talking about? Was it like depression or something like this? I mean, the problem with this is, and I'm sorry, this is a bit of a cold red pill really now, but showing weakness, showing too much vulnerability early on is not a good thing to do. And maybe this chap has come a cropper here because, you know, he said something and it's turned her off because she's sort of said, oh, he's shown that splinter of weakness, and that's not sexy. That's not something she wants to be involved with. So she pulled back. I would say, to be honest, move on. Really, I mean, like, I assume you've texted her a few times. Maybe she's not responding or whatever. I think you need to now pull away. If she gets back in contact with you, fine. If not, then leave it. I mean, maybe just leave it for a couple of weeks and then ping her. But I think you need to. I think you need to pull back in the short term and really wait for her to come back. If you send her a ping in a week or so and she reinitiates, then fine. But sometimes with things like this, if you make a mistake in the early stages, then a lot of the time you have to just accept that it's gone and move on. You know, you have to have that abundance mindset. Newman says, "What was your work before you became a dating coach?" Well, I was working in, I was doing corporate work for a long time, and I was working in advertising. I was doing sales as well for a long time. Then I was working in advertising. I was working in sort of negotiating commercial partnerships with various blue chip companies and media owners, which is all a lot of fun and actually quite good training, really, for doing this kind of stuff, because new media, social media is a big part of the work that even big publishers have to do nowadays. So a lot of those skills were transferable. But the thing with corporate work is that it's not very much fun, to be honest, and for some people I think it's pretty intolerable. For me, I did it for quite a long time, but I don't think my heart was ever really in it. I don't think I was particularly well suited to it, and when the opportunity arose, I got out of it, and I got out of it because I wanted to make content. So I wanted to write. I wanted to. Well, actually, I didn't want to create videos in the first place. Really, I didn't start doing videos until kind of like a couple of years ago. Really, but I was doing podcasts. I was writing articles. I was writing books, and I wanted to. I wanted to earn my living through that, and also doing a bit of coaching, and that's kind of how I grew it. So Josh says, I have a pretty good wardrobe and I dress pretty well when compared to most dudes. Can you suggest something to up my fashion game? It would depend, really. I'd need to see more pictures of you and everything else. If you search on my channel, though, I do have a video about fashion. And tomorrow in John's Body Language Mastery course, I'm going to be giving my fashion presentation to the group. So if you're in that, then I'll be doing that tomorrow, which has got some basic principles, overarching principles about fashion. I mean, basically fit, form, and flourish. Fit, you want to make sure it fits. It's good on the shoulders, all that kind of stuff. Form, you want to make sure if the materials are good and it's a well put together garment. And flourish, ideally, if you can choose things that are a little bit fancy, they've got a little bit of something to make them stand out. Those things I think are really key. But everybody's going to have a slightly different style. I mean, something that suits me is not necessarily going to suit you, and vice versa. So it's a very individualistic thing. And obviously, to really nail it down, you'd need to work with a stylist. But I think the key thing really is to make sure things fit well. Decent fitting shirts, decent fitting jackets, decent fitting jeans. Baggy stuff in the main doesn't work. It's not flattering. It doesn't look good. So just, try to look sharp. Okay. And if in doubt, veer towards the classics: suit jackets, shirts, smart jeans, trousers. Don't go too wacky. Just keep it classic. In London, has it happened that you see girls you approached in the street again as you're walking? No, not really. Very, very rarely. Sometimes, very occasionally, but no, not really. There's 10 million people here. I mean, it's big, And this is why I always say, big cities, fantastic. If you can get to a big city, that's what you need to do. I can't pronounce it. It says, how did you separate work and life? Workplace is very man-hating feminist. Karen's rage when seeing older men with hot young. Were you Batman? Is Batman what do you mean by Batman? But anyway, well, I just kept things very separate. I mean, like a lot of my colleagues, certainly as I got older, were married and had families and things like this, and I didn't. But they were pretty. They were all pretty decent. Nobody gave me too much of a hard time about it. I just did my stuff in the background. I also had girlfriends at various points and things like that. So it wasn't that I was on the rampage the whole time. But I just didn't really. I do stuff in my personal life, and then I come into work and do my work. I just compartmentalize the two, and people didn't always know what I was up to. So. So yeah, it wasn't a massive problem, to be honest. I mean, obviously in the workplace, you've got to be sensitive, and obviously you've got the Karens and the HR and all the rest of it. But I mean, just be careful at work. I mean, that's just how it goes. Genesis says, have you dated a girl with autism? I met this girl who has it, doesn't come across autistic, hitting off well. I don't know, really. I don't know if I have. I don't think I've ever dated a girl who has said, I am diagnosed with autism. I've certainly dated girls with some odd personality traits. But I don't know if I can really answer that one, to be honest, I'm afraid, because I don't know if they did have it, then it wasn't diagnosed, or they didn't tell me. So I wasn't aware of the diagnosis. So I can't say definitively that I have or not, if you know what I mean. I think as a general rule of thumb, sorry, I was going to say something almost disparaging then, which I shouldn't really say. But as a general rule of thumb, when you're in intimate relationships with people with mental issues and mental difficulties, just look out for yourself, because that can be corrosive for you. And, you know, as much as we can be sympathetic to those people and try and help, you know, it's like the old airplane thing, isn't it? You know, put the life jacket on yourself first. You know, you've got to save yourself. So being too intertwined with somebody who has a lot of issues to deal with can be not the place that you want to be. But I can't speak to autism specifically in that context. Do you have any infield? Usually that's the best way for an audience to see if a dating coach is legit. Yes, I've addressed this many, many times. I do. I have infield. I used to have infields on this channel. I've taken them down at the moment because of problems with YouTube and legality and confidentiality and these other things. I do, however, have them saved in a product. I can even give you the link. I did this recently, where I did a whole video about this actually, and I shared the link for the product. People are always like banging on, let's see your receipts. Let's see your receipts, son. There are indeed lots and lots and lots of examples of me talking to girls. But it's the other thing to say as well, is that it's not really that kind of channel at the moment. I mean, my channel is much more generalized. I mean, yes, I'm a dating coach in inverted commas, you know, and I do work with some private clients, and I do sometimes, you know, I have done sort of outdoor kind of day game type training with people. I do some Zoom calls with people and stuff like that. But, you know, my main occupation really is as a content creator. You know, my main occupation really is as a writer. And I've got those books, and they're all my experiences of dating in the sexual marketplace and stuff like that. I mean, that's really my main bread and butter, if you like. And so, yes, I mean, you know, infields are great. But I mean, this channel is more generalized now in the sense that we talk about some slightly different issues on here. We talk about a lot of game, but we also talk about lifestyle, mindset, self-development, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, you know, but anyway, that being said, there are plenty of infields. Maybe I'll put them back up again at some point. I don't know yet. And I'm trying to now find my link here. Oh, for God's sake. Oh yeah, here we go. Right, okay. If anyone wants to see me doing some wonderful infields, then you can get 10% off this collection here. And I've actually called the link Receipts, because people are always asking about seeing receipts. So, yeah, if anyone wants to see some world-class infields, me doing them, then you can check out those receipts there. But as far as YouTube's concerned, there's nothing up at the moment. What else have we got? Okay, listen. Yeah, let's see your receipts, son. Yeah, I want to see them receipts. Come on, Troy. You're not a player. What is a renegade playboy? Who the hell do you think you are? Let me see them receipts. etc. Yeah, so like I say, plenty of material out there, but it's not really the focus for this channel at the moment. But they are available if you want to see them. So with all of that being said, the other thing is as well, if you join my Patreon group, if you join my private members group, then I do share a bunch of infields with the guys on that group, but also I will. I actually do breakdowns of infields as well with the group members, so you can see all of that good stuff. But it's behind the paywall because of various things. But it's all like YouTube related, really. Newman says, "I always run out of things to say. How do you never run out of things to say?" Well, you have to learn the gift of the gab, and you can go to improv classes. You can. I've answered this before anyway. I think I've answered it to you, Newman, to be honest. But you can talk to a camera, you can film yourself talking, you can choose a random word and improvise on that random word. You can do improv classes. The best way, of course, is just to go out and talk to a whole bunch of girls and make mistakes and get it wrong, and then just keep trying, and you'll get better at it. But it's a bigger topic anyway, and I probably should save it for another video, really. Josh says, when in a relationship, I should be sleeping with other women. Many people on Twitter recommend this. I'm confused. What do you say? I say do what you want. I mean, I don't know. Just because some people on Twitter say you should sleep with other people, you're going to do that? Do what the hell you want, man. It's up to you. If you want to sleep with other people, sleep with other people. If you don't. It's like it's who cares what people on Twitter say? There's no rules here. I think perhaps what you're referring to is the idea of spinning plates, which is to say, if you put all your eggs in one basket, then there's a chance that those eggs are going to break. But if you meet a nice girl and she's your girlfriend and you guys are happy together, and and you don't want to be out there having sleeping with lots of other girls, don't. That's it's up to you. I think what is useful is to keep your flirtation skills on point. You can have conversations with people, you can be a little bit cheeky and stuff like that. Try and keep the skill set there. But sleeping with people, it's up to you, man. Getting phone numbers through approach is fairly easy. Following through to sex is a different story. It is, but we've talked before about the the attrition rates of daytime approach. Even top players, if you're getting 20%, 10 to 20%, you're doing incredibly well. Most people are more in the 20 to 1 out of 100 kind of range, probably in the larger part of that range. So yeah, it's not easy. You've got to play the numbers, but it is possible and it does work. But you've got to be persistent and keep going. Do you recommend approaching average-looking girls first for practice? Yeah, to some extent, but understand that the chemistry is never as good when you're talking to an average girl, because you don't really want to be talking to her. She kind of knows you don't really want to be talking to her. It's never got that fizz. It's never got that same dynamic as when you're talking to a girl that you're really, really into. And as Mr. Farhan says, average looking might horribly reject you as well. Sometimes the responses from the better looking girls can be better. So yeah, but yeah, sure, you can. If you want to get the engines running, and you want to get some practice, and you feel that is going to be less of a bridge for you to cross, then by all means do it. But like I say, you're going to get really more. It's more fun, and generally speaking, the interactions are better when you're approaching girls that you are actually attracted to. Troy, what do you do if you struggle holding eye contact while day gaming, being somehow shy? Eye contact's really important. You don't have to be staring at her the whole time like some crazed American psycho, but eye contact is important. It's a key tool in the skill set. If you find it difficult, you know, and I'm sorry to say this again, but really, there's you have to just practice, and you have to get over that, you know. And maybe you need to look at some of your hang-ups. Maybe you need to look at, perhaps there's some childhood trauma stuff here. You know, what are your insecurities? What are, you know, maybe you need to drill down and get some outside help. Maybe see a hypnotist like Ryan Christensen or Ryan Fowler, or, you know, see a counselor or something like that. Try and work out why you're having these issues. But in the end, you have to just persevere and go through it. I mean, like as I've said before, you know, I used to find it very difficult to hold eye contact with anybody, men or women, certainly attractive women. And these days I'm able to do it. And it's, you know, it's massively helped my dating success and my dating skills. It's possible to get good at it, even if you're coming from a very low base, but you might need to do that inner work first. Mr. Francis, when approaching women, do you prefer giving your number or getting the woman's? Getting the woman's, and to add to the statement, hot women tend to be approached less. Yes. In general, yes. And for that reason, very attractive women can be sometimes more receptive, or they kind of like it. They like that interplay. Girls who are somewhat less so, you know, the vibe isn't always that good. It's not like it's easy until you get to a certain level of attractiveness, and then it gets very hard. It can be hard here, and then it can be easier here. So there's not a direct correlation. Let me see your receipt, son. Indeed. All right, guys, look, I'm going to have to leave it now because I've got to grab some food and then go out and meet some friends and lots and lots of fun stuff. But it's been an awesome stream. Hope everyone's appreciated this. Hope you got some value from this. I'll type out the 5 key reasons. Well, actually, I tell you what, I won't even do that. Just go below, get on my free email list. There's a link below. It says join email list or something. Just get on my free daily email list. And tonight at 11 p.m. in the UK, an email's going out where I go into a bit more detail in writing about all of these 5 key elements why women leave good men. So you can read that beautiful email. And then the other emails that I send out emails most days, Monday to Friday, for free. So, you know, it's a great list to be on. Obviously, I'd put little offers in there, sometimes freebies, stuff like that. So, you know, get on it. I'm trying to, by the way, that email list, I'm trying to deliver as much value as I can in there. You know, I'm spending a decent bit of time in the morning crafting an email. I'm trying to do that every day because I kind of miss writing. I want to get back into the groove of writing. So that email list is where my writing is going at the moment. So get on it because it's good. And I'm sharing some good stuff on there. And it's stuff that you can't get anywhere else, or not usually. I mean, some of them I might put up on the blog, but in general, it just goes out to the email subscribers. So join, link below. Yeah, and that's it. So I will see you guys again very soon. I will be sharing some receipts. All right. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.